need a brief overview on Sakai. So, brief overview on Sakai is that it's a learning management system, open source learning management system. So it has tools for collaboration and learning and research, and it's used in some institutions. It is used just for research, in others it's used for a full learning management system. It has a plethora of tools, lots and lots of different tools that work together to provide this environment. So it has announcements, it has assignments tool, it has gradebook, testing quizzes, all kinds of built-in tools. And where we are with it, Sakai is 10 years old. It was developed in 2004, so we hit our 10-year anniversary. It has about 1.5 million lines of code. It represents like 40 person years of work. It's just an incredible amount of development that's gone into Sakai. And where we are right now, this first slide, I'm just going to show a couple of, this is actually on the web conference, the SakaiProject.org, which is our wiki for keeping information about Sakai. We also, and what this shows is that most of the institutions that use Sakai, about 64% or so, are already on Sakai 2.9, which is the preferred current production release, whether it's 2.9.3. And then we also kind of keep track, a lot of people, because it's open source, there's a lot of different ways that people can use Sakai. And most of the institutions say they use a community release version, meaning Sakai is constantly changing all the time. We have something called trunk, where developers are adding new stuff all the time, fixing bugs all the time. Then what we do is to manage that, we put it into a separate branch, for example, for Sakai 2.9. That the manager goes in there, tests the things that are put in development, and move them over, and that way they can test it and verify and make sure that that release stays good. So we have something called the maintenance branch. So we have a 2.9x maintenance branch, and that has the very latest stuff. But most folks tend to use, when we tag it and say we've done a full QA of the software and we're releasing it, try and play the volume here. And so most folks tend to go for that kind of a process using the tag version, which gives the most quality assurance testing. The upgrade that people are planning to move to, as you can see, most of them are planning to use the Sakai 10. And our status is that Sakai 10 release candidate 01 was just released this past Friday, which Ian mentioned in his presentation. And what does that mean? So what happens is we started the process for Sakai 10 in October and last year, 2013, and we started developing like what's going to go into it, right? What's the scope? What's going to go into it? What's not going to go into it? What's our rough schedule we're targeting? And right now, we do these iterations of QA. We test it, try and find bugs, try and break Sakai, and then the developers fix those bugs, and then we do another iteration. We went through 7 iterations of testing that way, and we just released the release candidate means we pretty much think it's ready to go. And so we do that, we do a final check over, we did find a bug, a major bug, so we're doing an RCO2, and RCO2 has a very good chance of becoming the production Sakai 10 release. Possibly, as early as the end of this conference, but maybe not. People obviously are here and they're involved in presentations and in different workshops, but hopefully if there's time, we'll get it out, and if not this week, it'll be very, very soon we'll have Sakai 10. So what's in Sakai 10? So I'm doing it, there's a lot of presentations that are related to Sakai 10. I'm doing one later this afternoon, I think around 3 p.m. or 3:15, whatever it is, on a very detailed view of Sakai 10. But just to give you an idea of Sakai 10, there are, again, on our wiki, Sakai 10 release notes are pretty much complete. They're very, very, very close to complete, and they're something you could read and depend upon for the most part. And there's an overview here, which I'm going to cover in my Sakai 10 presentation, but also I'll just mention here we had 2 major new tools added. The sign-up tool, which is a contribution primarily from Yale, and we also had delegated access. And the sign-up tool lets you do things like have sign-up for office hours, creates time slots for students to sign up to whatever kind of event that you want to create. Office hours is just one example. The delegated access tool allows you to kind of delegate out your support structure in Sakai to different entities on your campus. And then we have LTI. How many of you know what LTI is? Okay, so most but not all. So LTI stands for Learning Tools Interoperability. It's an IMS standard, and Sakai is a leader in LTI. And we are the first, Sakai 10 is the first LMS to have LTI version 2. We have LTI version 1, and what LTI does is it makes it easy to connect to external tools. So that you can plug in, there's a whole large number and growing number of both open source tools as well as commercial tools that support the LTI standard, and that means they can plug into pretty much any learning management system. So you build your tool once, any technology you want, you wrap it in LTI, and then you can deploy it to Sakai, of course, Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, any of them you desire to learn. So it's a very powerful technology. Some of the major one of the major tools that got a huge upgrade was the assignments tool. 2 new major features are added in the assignments tool. Let me check. How's my time going, by the way? Anytime. Good time. 18 minutes. I've been going good. Okay, so I probably need to go like this. Okay. So just to mention like one example, so it was like 2,000 fixes in Sakai 10. It's just a huge number. That's a combination of bug fixes, new features, then adding the new features, then fixing bugs and new features. So it's a cumulative thing. And one area, I guess, a couple of areas to highlight are the assignments tool has a peer assessment tool, which is very popular. It's becoming more popular with the advent of MOOCs. And that allows students to review each other's work and give each other a grade, and then the instructor can see the results of those peer assessments, and then decide whether they can override the grade or see what the comments are. And the other major feature is also group-related. It's a group feature where you can make an assignment to your students and divide them into groups, and then the groups can submit one time for all the students and get one grade, and again, the instructor has an override. That's one of the major revamps in assignments. We also have major changes to the gradebook, the syllabus tool, the forums tool, just many areas. And just to wrap up, I guess, to keep it not to get too detailed, but one of the other major things kind of behind the scenes that was made was a major change to the infrastructure in caching. So caching is a behind-the-scenes way of improving performance, and the infrastructure for major distributed caching is included in Sakai 10. So that means in future releases we'll be able to build upon that and really improve the Sakai's performance. So that's kind of where we are. We're at Sakai 10. We're about to release it. Tons and tons of new features and a lot of great community work going into that. One of the final note that's kind of interesting to me, because it was unexpected, is I went back and looked at the commits. There's an online tool called OLO, I think it's called, and I was looking at the commits. And commits are when the developers make their code and they push it into Sakai. That's called a commit. In April, we had the highest commit level to Sakai that we've had in 5 years, which surprised me, but there was a lot of stuff coming. So, thank you. Any quick questions? Applause? Thank you. Let me just take Sure.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Drew Wills from Unica. And I'll briefly introduce myself in uPortal while I struggle with the technology here. There we are. All right, just a second. Be proper ones. All right, very good. All right, so how many here have a uPortal at their institution? As many as that. That's kind of what I figured. All right, how many are at institutions that took a look at uPortal at some point in its decade and a half history? Okay, was that perhaps in the last year or two, or was that 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago? Further, even further. Okay, excellent. You then, sir, represent a category of people that that we would really like to reach because, of course, uPortal is quite a bit different in 2014 than it was in 2005 or 2007. And that is not always perceived. Sometimes we have to get a second look from people who saw it in that era. Sometimes we have to really struggle and take the message out there and say, look, there's all this great new stuff. So, briefly, with the 8 or 9 minutes that remain me before my presentation at 11, I will attempt to showcase some of those very good features. All right, so, uPortal 4.1, so just like Sakai 10, uPortal is on the eve of an important release. The most recent release version of uPortal is 4.0.13. There's actually a 4.0.14 that is also coming out quite shortly, but the big story is, of course, uPortal 4.1, which our best estimate is the next week or two after we were hoping to, the developers were hoping to meet face-to-face and have some final conversations here at the Dev Days in Miami. Anyway, uPortal 4.1, very important. And I've been connected with uPortal for a really long time. I would even categorize it as an embarrassingly long time. But I feel as though I've never come to one of these conferences with a better story in terms of what we've done recently and new features and the exciting things that are in the next release. We have a completely rebooted front end for uPortal. We have entirely replaced all the the rendering strategy and everything that goes into generating markup and JavaScript and CSS and so forth. We replaced it with all new stuff. We have a new theme for uPortal, and that's kind of uPortal speak, but a brand new theme called Responder, based on Bootstrap 3, using, again, all new versions of libraries like jQuery, jQuery-Y. We have a new kind of good Fusion library, which is something that we use. Anyway, all brand new, all 2014 or before 2014. And the main driver for this, the main purpose for this is responsive design. So now, uPortal now with responsive design. Here is a larger screen capture of what the responder theme looks like. uPortal responder theme. And here is a sort of a marketing image of responder being responsive. This image illustrates how uPortal responder reacts to different classes of devices, reacts to different display size devices, and does something appropriate on each of them, which is, we've had a mobile story in uPortal 4.0, and it was better than not having one. It was decent, but it wasn't as good as this. One other thing, actually, there's a large list of cool things that I have to tell you, but I certainly can't tell them all to you in the next 10 to minutes. So please come. Unfortunately, let's get to the next slide. Unfortunately, probably the best place to learn more about uPortal is about 12 minutes from now, when we do the state of the uPortal address, annual sort of talk that we give shortly in Session 2. But many of you will probably remain here. There are a pretty good number of presentations in the uPortal at the remainder of the conference. I encourage you to come and check out one or more of them. This list is only a partial list. I kind of cherry-picked some of the ones that I thought would be more effective for people looking at the portal for the first time. Anyway, I want to highlight one other feature. Something else new with uPortal 4.1 is this concept of multi-tenancy. This ability to create a portal within a portal, possibly for a campus or for a department or maybe for a medical school or the law school. You can give some constituency within your organization an entirely customizable, unique branded portal within a portal that has like all its own sort of brand and delegated administration, but has some of its own content, some shared content, and all hosted within the same sort of server deployment. And this is sort of a big deal and very cool. Very good. I am happy to take a question or two before I shuffle over. Should there be any?
Is there any demo site? I mean, I saw the screenshot to kind of see things, but is there some place to get a more interactive preview?
Like here at the conference or live online?
Or just live online?
We actually, Unicon has a showcase environment for them. It needs to be updated with the latest showcase. So when we connect like later, I'll recognize your face. I'll get some information.
Great.
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Anything else? Anyway, thank you. In addition to attending sessions, there's actually a flyer that details information about the portal that you can table over there. Please feel free to grab those. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to repeat what I just said to Drew. I originally got involved in what we call community source through being involved through my university in the UK in the adoption of Portal. The portal we chose was uPortal. And I think that choice was made in 2001. uPortal has certainly come a heck of a long way since 2001. It's really good to see one of our very first, our original project in many respects, doing so. I've got an opportunity now to talk to you about incubation, the Apereo incubation process. I'm going to be able also to say it much more slowly than I had the opportunity to this morning, where it's a bit like a speed reading test, actually, doing the welcome at Apereo conference. How many people were in that opening session, by the way? Cool, right. So you know the basics. I mean, essentially, our incubation process is designed to help the project enter and make use of the umbrella that Apereo represents. We provide a bunch of services. We do inbound and outbound license management. We do events like this. We provide infrastructure. We provide outreach, and we're the home for several communities. So, as I said this morning, there are two parts to incubation. One is a very explicit checklist of things to work through, but it is much more than a checklist. The second part is about supporting a project through either early stages or the stages of dealing with some of the issues we outline, using mentors provided from the community volunteers who've had some experience, in many cases quite a lot of experience, of similar software projects. So what are we looking for? First of all, in terms of the checklist, one of the most essential parts of essential things that a project has to do is get licensing straight. So it has to choose an outbound license. And many people know an awful lot about this. There are two broad types of software license an open source project can select. One essentially that lets users of the software go away and do what they want, including make commercial use of it. The other which restricts that use. There are something like 57 or 58 licenses approved by the Open Source Initiative. Most of our projects use the Education Community License or the Apache license, And they're the kind of commercial friendly license that I mentioned. So a lot of people know about that outward facing license stuff. One thing we do find, the other part of licensing is to do with inbound licenses, contributor agreements. And it really is an essential bedrock project builds on. Contributor agreement simply gives the foundation the right to use the code that is contributed in perpetuity. It's not a grant of IPR, but effectively it's a loan of IPR so that we can make it available forever. It's also an agreement that the code contributed is in a position to be contributed, in other words, that it's original. And another aspect of this, I've referred to code multiple times, but we're very keen that projects actually ensure they have contributor agreements for documentation and for translations. So whatever IPR is given to a project, really it needs to be licensed, and we need to be very clear with that. And that's protection for the project and protection for the adopter and the community it gives. I wanted to emphasize that because that's an element that projects quite often miss. We have had projects approaches which are relatively mature, they've been around for 2 or 3 years, but they actually don't have contributor agreements. And of course, the longer you let a project develop and mature without that in place, the more of a problem it is. So we place a good deal of emphasis on that, but we're looking at other things as well. Somewhat softer edge issues like how is the community organised around the project? What's the level of engagement and involvement? What steps are being made to engage and involve? Is it from more than one institution? How many? 5, 6, 10, more? How is a project governed? What structures are there to make sure that that engagement and involvement are managed into the future? And we want to see also experience of a release process that is open and transparent. Now, I wouldn't want to create the impression that being a mentor for one of our projects means you've got to be some kind of licensing lawyer. I'm certainly not, neither any of our mentors. Or that you've got to have incredibly strong technical skills. We have people in our community who can be drawn on for that kind of experience. We have a licensing group. That licensing group provides input as appropriate at points during the incubation process. We have folks who are experts on accessibility, on internationalization, and similarly, a mentor would call on those other community members to provide help. So we're not asking a mentor to be a super person who has detailed knowledge in technology and licensing. I think what we're primarily looking for is someone who's got that experience in community, who's been through some of the same problems or similar problems in the past, and has experience of their resolution. We provide training for mentors. That training is provided by Open Source Software Watch at the University of Oxford. We provide it online. It's largely done synchronously through Adobe Connect with supporting materials in Sakai. And we've run that training for the first time this year, and we've had a very good response from our first dozen mentors who are working on the program. So one of the things, as I said this morning, that I want to do with this event is to encourage people to think, either now or in the future, about potentially becoming mentors or working with the incubation process. Also interested, of course, in projects who might be interested in entering the process and getting something out of it. The last point I want to emphasize is that we have not simply kind of dreamed this stuff up on our own. Originally, JC, one of our foreign organizations, took an incubation process from the Apache Foundation and developed it, applied it to higher ed and higher ed specifics. We then took that and the experience of working with that through a second round of redevelopment last year. It will be modified in the future because we are at our heart, or should be at our heart, a learning community. The book isn't written on this stuff we are writing here, and I hope that you can help us write it. Very happy to answer any questions. I've either been completely incomprehensible or absolutely transparent and clear. Or you're already tired. That would be worrying.
No. Good explanation.
Well, thanks for listening. If anybody wants to talk to me about incubation later in the week, grab me in a corridor and we'll fix some time to talk. Who's on next? Nico.
Is Arlen Johnson in the space? Okay, so it'll go Arlen and then Nico. So there's a VGA cable at the front if you need it. It's right there in the middle.
Well, I'm actually very glad to have showed up at this session without if you've been reminding me, oh, by the way, aren't you supposed to be in that talk again? Oh, I know. That took me by surprise. As I skimmed over the schedule, I was like, oh, yeah, project talks, right. Well, I'm glad if I can get this thing to actually switch.
It takes a moment to find it. So as you see, it's scanning. It'll just be a second. If you've hit the function key.
I'll tell you the other thing I'm very excited about is the Bedework queue. It's on order. So that stuff automated. Here it is. Great thing is that it'll take me just as long to set up as it will talk. Yay, there we go. Small victory. So we are running Bedework, and developing it. The last year's been an interesting year. We've been working towards Bedework 3.10. If you're not familiar with what Bedework is, we're a calendaring system. So open source comprehensive events and calendaring system. A couple of newsworthy points I love. Well, I'll talk about it. I'll try some time. So some of the stuff that's been going on in the Bedework environment is that we've been working towards massive scalability, and we've been working as a system and platform for other systems to use. So one of the more interesting newsworthy points is that we found out just this past October that there was a large bid that was placed out for basically the Veteran Service Department of Veteran Affairs was looking for a scheduling system that they could use to manage all of the scheduling of their medical appointments and so forth. Which, of course, as you know, has been much in the news lately. Lots of uproar over these not going well. And we just found out about a week ago. We didn't know this until one of my colleagues was sitting in CalConnect and saw on the screen that Bedework was actually being used as the underpinnings for the CalDev server for that system, which is neat. It's a good thing. We actually know most of the folks involved here, but they never bothered to give us a call and say, "Oh, by the way." And of course, we all, who build open source systems know how often that can occur. Like we just mentioned this morning that they found out there were 23 organizations or universities in China that had gotten together for the second year in a row talking about their implementation of Sakai. And so that's one of the both exciting and almost nonplussing things that can occur when we develop systems like this, that people will take and use it and do amazingly large things with it. Sometimes you only find out sort of way after the fact. So this is a very exciting thing for us, and we're happy to see it now. All right, so there are important enhancements that have been developed over this past year with Bedework 3.10. Massive scalability is what we're aiming. And to that effect, we've moved to Elasticsearch and taken on a NoSQL approach to a lot of our actual queries. That we still, of course, have a database engine behind the scenes to handle persistence and so forth. But a lot of our actual searching and implementations in this direction is very effective at allowing us to scale to. We'd like to get into users as well. We've got a new fully integrated caching scheme for the public end. The caching system that we've had from version 3.8 on was built in Ruby. It was sort of outbound. It was a very separated system, which is fine. This is much more integrated. We can tell when the cache needs to be cleared, whether it needs to do any sort of specialized scripting to clear the cache. It's all set and integrated, so that's a big deal. We have a no-build deployment. All one needs to do is download the system, stick it on a server, and configure it through a web interface, and you've got yourself a running system. One can choose to build components of Bedework should they choose, but there is no need to do so. It really is a black box. You download it, you install it. There is a new public user interface, which I'm going to show to you very, very briefly. Fully responsive. I'm very pleased with the fact that it passes the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines with a AAA rating, which was important to a lot of folks who run Bedework. And I'll talk about what this multi-select integrated query means just by showing you very briefly what that actually looks like. So here is, it shows up. Back to it. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And also support for the latest standards. One of the things that we've been doing lately is people, which is consensus scheduling. So if you use Doodle and so forth, or this is exactly what people allows you to do with direct integration with common clients. So one can send a request right from your iPhone or your Android phone and say, hey, let's schedule a meeting, we'll put it all together, and we'll give it to you. notifications right on their device. Say, okay, these times are good for me. It'll auto-populate based on their busy time. And then the organizer gets the response back and vote on when the best time is, just like the voting table. And at that point, a regular scheduling request goes out to all the various hosts. So those are the kind of things that we've been doing and working on this past year. 3.10 should be released within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We are in the final polish of that. We put out a couple of release candidates recently. And we had hoped to have it released a month ago, probably, but we're also very proud to have support, some of the most recent support from the National Public Library Systems that's invested some in this 3.10 release. Let me see if I can show you what that actually looks like. Come on. If I can, maybe I'll show it to you during the live. And I think the universe is conspiring against me at this point, which is good enough. So whoever's next. Oh, there it is. Hang on. I'm going to give you a quick look at the public interface that we've been working on to some degree. The colors are a little dim up there. But what I mean by massive, by multi-selection here is sort of a faceted search that's actually curated by end users for very large organizations. In the case here, I'm using the National Public Library's data. They have 37 branch libraries. They have lots and lots of events. And so a couple of things that go on here is that now people simply select a start date, you can add filters, you can pick between all these things. If I'm interested in movies, I automatically get these things filtered by movies. Everything is now Ajax based. We've got, maybe I want to take a look at what's going on only at Edge Hill. That's fine. And all of the stuff that we have on the left-hand side can be quickly built up. It's entirely arbitrary, depending on the site. That's one way to stack data. And should consider set routine as well. Or maybe I'm only looking at things for, I'm looking specifically for family movies. So there we go. So we get that kind of built-in queries here. We've got these groups which are ordered together inside, banded together here. We intend to add an advanced interface that allows us to do all the Boolean expressions across these types of events in the future. It scrolls endlessly. Sort of an endless scrolling environment here, so as I go to the bottom, I get more, and more, and more, etc. And also the responsive interface, which allows us to handle smaller and smaller screen resolutions until we get down to mobile. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. Thanks. Sorry for all of you.
So,
It does seem to be working. We should get a new computer. Okay, so I'll do a brief talk about the Apereo local connected environment or Apereo OE. About 23 slides to run through in 7 minutes, so I'll try. So for those of you that are not familiar with the OE project, what OE tries to do is it tries to offer support for academic collaboration and academic network. That can mean many different things. So it can be simple one-to-one collaboration, it can be larger group collaboration, it can even be cross-institutional. It allows you to do things like uploading files, creating links to external resources, sharing it with people, groups of people. You can create documents where you can work on with multiple people at the same time. There's a very flexible and powerful permission system. There's a There's a way in which you can easily keep track of things. It's easy to make things available to a wider audience. You can find things, reuse things, discover things, and so on. One analogy that we tend to use quite a bit is the sort of structured classroom versus the library commons, or the learning spaces, as they call them in the US, where on the one side you've got these very structured class spaces, which are designed to deliver sort of a content delivery from the top to the bottom. This is sort of what LMSs are designed to do, things like Sakai, and deliver the thing they do well. Whilst OE is sort of complementary to them, where you've got these library common spaces which are quite unstructured, and use them for many different purposes, quite flexible design. So in production, we're already seeing quite a few different ways in which OE is being used by people. So there's things like small student projects as part of a course assignments. There's larger research collaborations. There's even entire communities of interest that span the institution by A little bit about the OE architecture. What's important to understand is that OE is a multi-tenant system, which means that a single installation of OE can support multiple institutions at the same time. Each institution will have its own URL they can go to, its own branding, its own skinning, its own set of users. The additional benefit is that people from different institutions on the same installation, they can actually start to collaborate with each other. They can share items with them. They can invite them to groups. So this is one example where it's like a single installation is being shared across the country with multiple institutions using that. The way in which it manifests itself to the people inside of the institution is so each institution gets a tenant which has its own URL, its own branding, its own skinning, its own set of users. For the people at your institution, it looks like an institutional system, something is being provided to them from the institution, with the added benefit that they can actually, from that system, start to collaborate with people in these other institutions. When you zoom that out, that's when it becomes really interesting. This is also what we're aiming for. It manifests itself in exactly the same way. So, different institutions get their own URL, their own branding, their own scanning. They can start to work together. We're already seeing a few really good examples of people all over the world starting to work together on things like a research project. Especially in our communities of interest, we've got one fairly big one for fashion. We're seeing a lot of collaboration with different people. If you want to have a look at, you just want to get a feel of what the system offers, what it allows you to do, you can play with this online. Unfortunately, you missed the state of the project presentation where we had a full demo, but I'm sure you'll be able to watch it online after the conference. This is available at all points in time, so you can go to it and play.
So come back to where we wanted to write it down.
Sorry?
Come back to the URL so that they can.
Oh, sorry. This URL is for one tenant on a specific installation, so we have multiple things. So a little bit about the achievements that the OE project has had in the last 12 months. It's been a really good year, actually. There's lots that has happened. The project has grown quite a bit. So first of all, at last year's conference, we hadn't had our first production-ready release yet. At this point, we're at 7 major releases, 15 minor releases, a whole bunch of patch releases. All of those are production-ready. They've all been used in production by multiple universities. So there's lots of activities, lots of things. As you can see, speeding up as well. I'm not going to highlight all of the features that have been added in the past 12 months. This is going to take too long. The main one I'll highlight is the fact that we now have a fully responsive UI that works really well on desktop devices, tablets, mobile devices. I think that's really good. Internationalization. This was last year, where we had 2 complete translations of French and English, a couple of partial translations. This is this year, and so there's been lots of activity in the community. We've got full translations for French, and actually Frederick at the bank is responsible for that. We've got English, Dutch, German, Spanish, Catalan, Hindi, Chinese, Swedish, and Brazilian Portuguese. And there's a whole bunch of partial translations as well. We're hoping to build this up. You can help us out here as well. There's a really simple online interface where you can just translate the system without having to install it. If you've got a spare weekend, it's usually really easy to do. This was last year as well, so there's the three big investing institutions. This is this year, so we added two. Sakai has become the investor in the project. That's a consortium of 70 French universities. And then Research, which is a company in the UK, in London, which opened offices all around the world. They have about 300 customers. They've become invested in the project as well. Apereo, we started off the year being an incubation project, at least when incubation was started. At this point, we've graduated from incubation, which is really important. We've won a few awards as well. So the full, which is the fashion community that I mentioned at the beginning, they've received both a Teaching with Sakai Innovation Award and a Campus Technology Innovator Award. They use a combination of Sakai and OE. So they use Sakai for book delivery, and they use OE for the collaboration for the people involved in the book to sort of keep them involved after they've done it. Again, this was last year where at the conference we expressed the intent of these three universities to try and share a multi-tenant installation of OE. That has happened, and much more has happened actually. So this is where we're at this year. We've cranked up that number from 3 to 31. There's 31 different institutions and organizations using it in production. Some of them heavily, some of them are starting to kick the tires and starting to happen. One exciting bit is that Research, the company that's just come in, is planning to roll this out to all 300 customers in September the next month. If all goes well by the next conference, I won't be able to make this up. Yeah, these are some screenshots of the different tenants on the shared environment. So that environment is being hosted jointly between the core project team and research for the support and so on. If you're interested at all in having a tenant to actually for your institution to use this or to just play with it, let me know. You can get something set up very easily. These are the remaining sessions about OE at this conference. So there's I guess the state of the project before. Next session, there's an architecture overview for those who are interested in the technicals behind this. Tuesday, there are two usage sessions about the fold and other stories from people using the system. Then Wednesday, there's a presentation by uPortal on how they're using it for any so,
Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm
Very close. Four.
Hello everyone, my name is Sandeep Jamkar. I work as a learning analytics specialist at Paris College. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction about the new initiative that we started, Apereo Learning Analytics initiative. Let me start by giving the little bit of context about what learning analytics is. Okay. This is pretty much the standard definition you'll find. Learning analytics is a measurement, collection, and analysis of learner data that we're collecting from various systems. Right? And what we're trying to do here is identify trends and patterns as to how the learning processes happen. More towards who are the students who are likely to succeed in this particular course, what kind of sufficient quality that the students are providing in terms of assignments and stuff like that. We can also keep track of like how students are interacting within the classes and where are the communities emerging. Those kind of analysis can be done within the we take it a step further and we also try to improve and enrich the learning experience once we have sufficient insights as to how we can help the students to have a better experience within the classroom. This slide briefly touches base on various aspects of learning analytics. That's that blue circle up there. Basically, that's where we are pulling data, the learner data from a variety of systems. It can be your student information system, it can be your LMS, it can be Apereo or OAE, it can be your social networks, like Twitter feeds and whatnot. Basically, we collect data from all of these varied sources and put some contextual metadata that converted into actionable information that we can analyze and start finding for patterns. Basically, in terms of knowledge and discovery, that's where much of the data comes in happens. What we do is we look into the data points we have collected, the historical data we have collected, and staged, and start to try to find correlations between like how each of the data points affect the final outcome. The outcome it can depend on what is the question you're trying to answer, and be as simple as whether the student is going to succeed in this course or not, or it can be more towards like the quality of students, or it can be more towards like what learning happens, what best and what kind of learning. So depending on the analysis you want to run in the data mining process, what we do is we use big data techniques and machine learning algorithms which can provide us more evidence and we can create models which can predict the future as to what's going to happen. Basically, we are striking a balance between the past data, the current data, and we're trying to predict what's going to happen. Once we have the predictions, we deliver them, we deliver this quality insights using various reporting frameworks or dashboard systems, so that more actions can be taken in terms of how to devise personalized interventions so that they can improve the performances and boost it even more. We close the loop by also feeding this analytical outcomes, what kind of intervention strategies work best, so we kind of feed it into the learner data, and we close the loop, and the analysis continues. It's iterative process, and through each iteration, our model kind of gets better because there's a lot more data reinforcing the context. So now let's dive a little deeper into what is Apereo and AI. EDUCAUSE releases something called as a Horizon Report every year, which basically talks about what are the trending technologies to watch out for. Learning analytics has been there in that particular report for almost like 45 years. In the latest report, what they mentioned is learning analytics as a large-scale deployment is going to be possible. It's going to be coming up in like a year or two from now. So that's where our Apereo learning analytics initiative comes from. So we are open learning analytics community. So basically what we try to do is we accelerate the operationalization of learning analytics software so that we are coming up with open, scalable, sustainable software. At this point, there are a lot of isolated pockets of innovations in terms of learning analytics. This is deployed on a small scale, and there's a lot of reputation in terms of work. So we as a community, what we want to do is connect all of these various projects together and come up with like a system where we can disseminate knowledge to the community, have them collaborate more in terms of taking the work forward. It also provides a lot of cross-validation opportunities. The models we develop at Myers College basically can be deployed and tested out in some of the knowledge in different times. And what we try to do at this point is, last year at the conference, we saw a lot of analytical solutions which were already going on within Apereo, and we tried to create like a plumbing between each of these analytical solutions so that we can create an ecosystem around it and close the loop I was talking about in the previous slide. So this is the minimum stack we are currently working on. In the very good. This is the learning analytics diamond that Aaron Bukowski basically created. Much of this work is based on the white paper that Society of Learning Analytics and Research Solar released. Basically, they are an international research community around learning analytics, and we are partnering with them to provide like technical model, whether they bring in the research model, and we go forward as a community together. In terms of this particular diamond, the very blue corner of there, that's your learning activities collection. That's basically bringing in data from a variety. Yeah, basically bringing in data from a variety of systems. I was talking about like LMS, CMS, Sakai, your social networks, etc. You name it. We can basically tap into and try to bring it into a common repository called a learning record store. There are quite a few implementation of learning record stores available. Basically, the way you feed data into into a learning record store is through XAPI standards or Calico standards. At this point, XAPI folks have like a reference implementation. It's basically a triplet. It goes like an actor, verb, and an object. Like for example, Sandeep posted something in a particular forum, right? It creates like an experience statement, and that is what is getting transmitted into your learning record storage. So learning record storage is basically a single point where you are feeding data from a variety of sources, and you can it provides an opportunity for analysts like me to go with our toolbox and panels and try to extract whatever data we require for analysis for our particular analytical solution. In terms of learning data analysis, at this point we have like an early alert system in place that we have developed at Myers College. It basically takes data from the student information system and also partly from elements, and now we are also looking into tapping into learning record store to basically write data adapters and bring them as predictive metrics. What we do is we run analysis on historical data and try to find correlations as to what are the data points that we should be looking at to identify who's the student at risk at various junctions in the semester. And we give like a score, a probability score, and categorize them into risk categories like high, medium, and low risk categories. And depending on the risk category, we can take suitable action. When we feed it to the instructors, they basically devise personalized information strategies and close the loop in terms of enriching the student's experience in terms of boosting performance. For the actions part, at this point, we are also looking into another area of project, which is the Student Success Plan. That is a case management system where they have like a comprehensive delivery mechanism in terms of action plans, personalized and customized action plans for each of the students. What they are currently lacking is an algorithm-based automated system which is kind of identifying who are the students who need help and what kind of interventions work best in what kind of scenario. That is what we are trying to include in the analysis there. And we are also looking on something for the generic dashboard so that we can streamline our communication of our analytical insights in a better way. The dashboard we envision is going to be having more perspectives in terms of students, faculty, management also. So this is the work that is underway. There are more sessions going on related to this. The first one is going to be at 1 o'clock in the same room. So I recommend that you follow up with us during the entire duration of the conference. Useful. So I'll make the slides available.
Thank you.
Here we go. That's it. Well, hi everybody. Thanks for listening to a quick short talk on a central authentication service known as CAS. If I were to describe CAS in 10 or more words, what I'd say is that CAS is free and open source enterprise single sign-on software for the web. It obviously is an Apereo responsive project, and it's been around since 2003. It officially became an Apereo project around 2005. Since then, it really is comprised of two significant parts. One is an open and well-documented protocol that describes features of single sign-on software, single sign-on that the CAS really supports. And the implementation of that protocol is available as a Java web application service software, for which there are many client applications that you can use, client libraries really that you can use to integrate your given application with CAS, from ASB all the way down to Zorp. There are particular integration libraries available for you to integrate your CAS server, your application with CAS. There are many CAS sessions today are available today this week at Apereo. If you're interested to know more about two-factor authentication with CAS, or if you already actually do run a CAS system and would like to upgrade, or if you're interested about user interface aspects of CAS and how you can select dynamic login screens for, let's say, alumni or various other types of audience, or if you're just simply starting out and would like to know what it would take to implement single sign-on for your university or institution, I would very much encourage you to take a look at some of these sessions. I would like to kind of best describe CAS to you better in form of a number of quick screenshots of the demo. So, in terms of the CAS project, the current major release of the software is CAS 4, which came out just about a month ago. There are many enhancements in the CAS project, some of which are the ability for CAS to authenticate not only users via a directory service, Active Directory or OpenLDAP, but also reflect the account status of the authenticated user. So if you have locked down a user in your Active Directory instance, or if their password has expired, now has the ability to kind of notify you about it. CAS supports, in addition to the CAS protocol I mentioned,
that is also documented on the basic.org or Apereo wiki also supports a number of other protocols such as SAML, OAuth, OpenID, SVNego, Radius, client certificates, and just about any type of authentication scheme you can think of. CAS does have a module that supports it. The entire code base of the CAS project is available on GitHub under the JSIC endpoint, basic/CAS. The project really is comprised of 6 or 7 committers and many, many contributors all around the world, really in terms of contributing documentation, code, patches, asking the right question. My point really is that it has really gained quite an extensive adoption since its inception around 2005. One last thing, I think I know I have just about 2 minutes. One last thing I'd like to mention is if you're interested to learn more about CAS, the CAS documentation is also available on basic.github.io/CAS. And it really describes everything you need to know about the CAS software, things you would like to consider in terms of architecture, deployment, security concerns, high availability guide, designing multiple CAS themes and branding for your institution, supporting various types of applications that you might have deployed at your institution and how they would take advantage of single sign-on. And just about everything else, like I said, that you need to know about the project is listed. Maintained by the community is fairly accurate, I dare say, and we hope to continually improve upon this. And finally, once you've been through the documentation and have got a good grasp of the CAS software and what single sign-on could mean for your institution, there is plenty of help all around that would allow you to really take better advantage of software. There are public mailing lists for users and developers, those who are interested to contribute to CAS. There is obviously conferences like Apereo and elsewhere, like ESA Days and Paris last time, that there's always talk about identity access management and how CAS fits into all that. And there's of course commercial support for CAS. You can simply just find experts, really, Unicon and others, that will really attempt to instruct you better on how you would implement single sign-on. Yes, that's my time. So thanks very much for listening.
That may be it. I don't think I see Janice. Or Andrew Clisol. Nope. All right. That is the last of the project talk. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And lunch will be provided, I think, in Symphony 3 or 4.